Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you a 4 vs 4 on Caumont Le Vent, and in this one I'm going to be playing with the first Pancerna. On my team today I have Lau, Mystical Walrus and Eugen, who are using the Guards Armoured 15th Infantry Scots and the 3rd Armoured, and on the Axis side we have Sombra, Al Reaper, Mark and Gonzo, who are going to be using the 716th, 12th SS, 12th SS again, and the 116th Panzer respectively. So some very good players in this game, and it was certainly a great game. That's why I'm bringing it to you guys as a replay commentary. Now, of course, I have been spoiling you lot with a lot of live commentaries lately, so I thought I'd go back to a replay commentary once in a while, and this is just that. So I had basically quite a good stream lately, and there were many really good replays to choose from, but I chose this one in particular just because it shows off the strengths of the division, the first Pancerna, but it also gives me an opportunity to discuss different decisions that were made throughout the game that could be applied to your own play, like you guys, the viewers. So I wanted to kind of show that off, and there's a lot of opportunity for me to do so. Right, anyway, let's have a look at some of the units we're putting down here. We have 3 units of recon to start. These are quite simply just going to be following the roads to their respective locations. So we've got the one on the left side that's going to be heading up to these sort of trees. Then we've got one that's going to be heading up towards the middle area just to scout out these tree lines and so on. And then we've got one that's going to be heading to the right side that's either going to be opening up the middle or kind of looking to the left. But it really depends on where it ends up. So let me just show you my deployment. We've got some Streltsy on the left side, going to be heading up to this building. We've got one set of infantry moving up to the center with a Cromwell 6 covering this open ground. Cromwell 6s work really well here because they have the 1,200 meter range. So if you start to play aggressively with infantry at any point and you bump into enemy infantry in these tree lines or enemy AT guns and so on, then you can engage them at the 1,200 meter range in phase A with a Cromwell 6. Then for this right side, I do have 2 more units of infantry with a command infantry and the AT gun. That's going to be covering the mid with the recon well ahead in the Jeep. I also decided to bring in a command afterwards on the left side just to accompany this recon and these rifles. So yeah, there we go. That's all of my troops heading towards the front line. So I'm taking the center left of the map as a whole. I've got Eugen on my left with the 3rd Armoured. He's actually going to be going up against Gonzo, whilst I'm up against Al Reaper. Now, this matchup is actually really difficult. We're playing against 12th SS, and thankfully we have the 716th on our right side, because if this was Mark with another 12th SS, things could get very, very difficult. The main reason being is the Fireflies. Eugen here spotting this one. I think that was actually my Zwiadowski spotting that, but either way, the Boyd's Firefly is spotted, and this is very difficult for the Polish to deal with early on. Now, since the only thing that I have to pin it is a Hurricane, I was thinking of investing into one early on. But the main reason that the Boyd's Firefly is so difficult is because the Cromwell 6, although it has the 1,200 meter range, will get popped by a Firefly from max range. So you'd have to do the fire position trick just short of the Firefly, but since the Firefly has enough armor for it not to really do too much, it takes a while and it's very, very tricky. So it's unlikely that you'll ever see somebody try to use a Cromwell 6 to pin down a Firefly, and because of that, you're left with very limited options against it. The only other choice really is like an AT gun at close range, but what I was going to go for was the 2 Staghounds here plus the Hurricane strafe. So the idea being I would strafe the Boyd's Firefly till it's like half pinned, then I can basically attack it quickly with the Staghounds and hopefully put a lot of pressure on it that way. At least that was the plan. So you can see I'm bringing in 2 Hurricanes here. I've bought one, it's coming in. I'm going to bring in the second one shortly after. The reason I'm staggering bringing them in is because I don't want them to both strafe at the same time. I want the second one to be able to cover the first one in case another fighter comes in, and therefore we can sort of win that engagement. So you can see this one's already finished strafing when this one starts strafing. That's about perfect in that case. So I'm going to wait until they come round for another run, and then it's going to allow me to use my stag hounds aggressively to try and get the better of the Boy to Firefly. I've just got to hope there's nothing in the way, like an AT gun or maybe a Panzerschreck or something like that, because otherwise my attempt to fast move up the road will be thwarted quite easily. So here come the Hurricanes for another strafing run, starting to put a lot of pressure on the Boy to Firefly, and you can see my stag hounds now going to be moving out into line of sight in order to try and rush it down. Now my opponent is going to try and take a shot at the stag hound, which is well worth doing, but as long as my stag hounds do hit the mark, I should be able to make the Boy to Firefly fall back now. And of course my Hurricanes are coming round for another run, so with that stress I am able to get away with not losing a stag hound here, and since it is falling back, it's time for one of the stag hounds to just zoom towards it whilst the other keeps firing. So we're just trying to get rid of this Boy to Firefly by pinning it down, but as you can see, Panzergrenz in a nice position here from our Reaper does manage to clean up that stag hound, stop it from surrendering or potentially just killing the Boy to Firefly, and I'm therefore forced to back off since the other stag hound won't be able to use that road. Also, we have seen the investment into both of the verbal vins here. There are 2 verbal vins that have been bought to stop my Hurricanes from being a threat, so now I'm in a really bad position because my opponent has bought the counter to the only thing that I can use to kill the Boy to Firefly. So with that being the case, it's time to move my Cromwell 6 to the centre. Now I mentioned earlier how the 7/16th being on my right was way better than the 12th SS, because if I had to deal with another Boy to Firefly here, there is no way that my Cromwell 6 would be useful. But what a Cromwell 6 is very good for is taking on the 7/16th. So I thought what I'd do is move over to the right side with Mystical here, and basically put a lot of pressure onto Sombra so that I could just maintain pressure somewhere on the map until the later phases, because of course there are ways for me to kill a Firefly. It just comes in phase B and phase C now in the form of either a 17 pounder or my own Fireflies. The Hurricanes are pretty much out of commission on the left side, and of course I did already lose a stag hound, so I'm just going to be keeping this one in cover for the time being. But it is actually quite difficult for our Reaper to push aggressively with a Firefly unless he accompanies it with a Boy to Cromwell, which we currently haven't seen. Also, if anything tries to push aggressively like the Panzergrenz, then my stag hound can use line of sight to pin those down, as well as my command carrier and so on. So there isn't really much of a way for our Reaper to get super aggressive. He will need to sort of buy in things like mortars and so on, plenty of recon, and sort of really build up that push. The other thing is, the 12th SS might not want to push in phase A because it is a division that can very much cater to the late game, since you only have 70 points per minute in phase A, and therefore my opponent may be more passive because of that. But our Reaper going to be bringing in the Boy to Cromwell now to assist his Boy to Firefly in pushing forwards aggressively. Now with the Boy to Firefly getting very close to this tree line here, and my command currently not being spotted, it tells me that there's not really any recon that will stop me from moving an AT gun up to this position and potentially taking a shot at the Firefly. So that's why a 6-pounder is now going to be coming in on the left side. Meanwhile on the right side, my infantry is going to continuously probe up, and I've also decided to bring in another 2 Cromwells on the right, which again can do loads of work against the 7/16th. That's what I'm really doing here. You can see me slamming these Ostropen while my infantry run across the field, pretty much free from harm, for the time being at least. So my Staghound's in position. As soon as the 6-pounder gets here, the 6-pounder can start firing at the Boy to Firefly, then I can push around the corner with the Staghound. As long as I make sure I'm out of range of the 150 meter Panzerfaust, the Boy to Firefly should be in trouble. The Cromwells, both on attack move orders, just going to be sort of assisting against any infantry we find. I can also start engaging the B2 from 1,200 meter range, and that can sort of help pin that down and stop the pressure onto this town, which currently Sombra is seemingly doing very well. But look at that Cromwell 6 pin down all of these Osttruppen. Definitely the help Mystical Walrus needed. So initially, Universal Carrier was brought back here, just because with the Boy to Firefly getting aggressive, I was a little bit worried that a big push would be coming through. And this position here is a really good way to sort of sponge with like a second line of defense. So I was just going to keep it there for the time being, just kind of feeling out what Al Reaper's going to do whilst I start to make more moves on the right side. Because if Al Reaper realizes I have 3 Cromwells on this right side, then we could very much see his Boy to Firefly head in this direction. And the Boy to Firefly, it is going to make a move to the right side. It's trying to use this road, which was very risky from Al Reaper. But I think since it already started moving in that direction, he is going to commit. I think initially he sort of double checked that and basically realized what he'd done. Best chance now though is just to fast move as fast as you can into cover. But my 6-pounder now getting into position, having not unloaded it, it does allow me to use the Universal Carrier very quickly to get it into a better position, with the idea of hopefully side-shotting the Firefly. So Al Reaper has seen all of my Cromwell 6s, he's moving to counter that. But now my 2-star 6-pounder is firing away. We do manage to get the shooter knock, but we hit the front arm and the Boy to Firefly. We're going to get a driver wound, which is really good. That gives my 6-pounder even more chance to get a penetrating shot. And since we're at 800 meters, we actually have the 13 AP versus the 11 front armor, which is a good, decent chance to penetrate, but no luck so far. And the Firefly, it is going to get out of line of sight, and my 6-pounder is not successful. However, the Cromwell 6s are still doing fine work. I brought in some infantry on the far right just to give Mystical Walrus a little bit of a hand. I'm going to have my Cromwell 6 actually fire position towards the Pack 40 just to pin that short, as I don't want the Pack 40 to come and one-shot my Cromwell 6. And on this side, you can see I've moved back the Streltsy to the edge of the tree line just so that units like my Carrier and the Cromwells can maybe help out. So I've picked up the 6-pounder again. That's now going to be moving back to its original location. I end up changing my mind here. But the Staghound can be moving to the left to try and pin down the Panzergrens that are pushing forwards. Since I've seen the Boy to Firefly starting to move to the right side, I am free to use the Staghound to try and pin any infantry that does go aggressive. But here comes Whitman. It is now phase B. 12th SS going to be trying to use that against me. Panzergren's going to be doing a runner. Boy to Cromwell did come over to the centre here, but I got absolutely beat on by my own Cromwell 6s, so I managed to make that fall back. These Fusiliers, they're going to get spotted by the recon I've got moving across the centre here, and therefore they're going to get hit pretty hard, but now the Firefly is getting involved. So what I've done initially is, of course, engage my opponent, found out it's the 12th SS. I've decided to move to the right side, use my advantage against the 7/16th against Sombra, instead of trying to take on Al Reaper in the early game. Now we're in phase B. I can start to think about how I'm going to deal with Whitman and potentially the Boy to Firefly. So that is where a 17-pounder comes in handy, and that's what I'm bringing up with the Bedford truck here in order to get into a similar position as the 6-pounder. But the good thing is having the 6-pounder still in this position and the Universal Carrier to pull it around, I can potentially use 2 AT guns against Whitman at once, which would be really, really nice. But for now, Cromwell 6 is in the open on the right side. They're going to have to make a full retreat, as I really don't have too much that can deal with the Boiter Firefly, other than this new 6-pounder that I've brought up, that is going to be accompanying my rifles in the new location that I have just secured. The Panzerwerfer, that's going to be coming in. Fortunately, it does not hit my 6-pounder. It was a little over the mark. I believe he shot at where my 6-pounder used to be, but since I'd moved it with the universal carrier, he is going to get caught out here, as the 6-pounder does engage at close range. Going to turn off the return fire. He does manage to reverse in time. Going to try and bait the engagement with the Staghound. It looks like our Reaper's going to fall for it. We've got the Hurricane firing away. My 17-pounder in the meantime taking shot onto the 232 and half track on the left side. 6-pounder does get forced to fall back after it is pinned. Staghound takes one more shot. Lucky to be alive after that one. Internal fragments. But Whitman going to get away with it for now. My 17-pounder back here doesn't have line of sight due to the orchard, which was a bit awkward. So across the boards, I'm not having much luck. These 6-pounders have really let me down so far. The Staghound not hitting Whitman meant I couldn't really put the pressure on whilst it was falling back, because it didn't fall back in the end. But as Whitman now moves forwards, I'm able to engage with the 17-pounder, and that should hopefully get the better of Whitman, or at least force him to fall back for the time being. But better than that, get the kill. So Whitman goes down. He's dealt with nice and easy. That allows my Cromwell 6 to start moving forwards more aggressively on the right side, as I still have eyes on the Boiter Firefly. I don't have to worry about that. I can pin down this infantry very nicely indeed. The other good thing about this 17-pounder position is I'm able to fire across towards Gonzo's Jagdpanzer 4. And as the Jagdpanzer recovers, it actually gets track wheel damaged. It's going to try and get away from the 17-pounder. Bounce off the front armor as it tries to turn away to retreat. Boom, Jagdpanzer down. So even hurting Gonzo's attack towards Eugen, very awesome engagement here actually between these two very strong players. Managing to help out just a little bit there with that Jagdpanzer kill. At the same time, I did manage to get the 6-pounder kill onto the Boiter Firefly on the right side. So 2 really good kills, actually 3 really good kills. Whitman, Jagdpanzer and the Boiter Firefly all in quick succession, which has led me into a really strong position and allows my Cromwell 6s to now get aggressive once again. So Mysticals brought in these 25-pounders. They're going to be great for killing off the Flak 41. I believe the Churchill 5 does get the better of the Pack 40, so that was very nice. And so the Cromwell 6s are just free to push forwards, accompanied by this recon, and continue to make ground. Now the Panzergrenadier does push through here, kills one of my Strelzy squads, but my command infantry is just good enough to hold the line for the time being. 6-pounder does get forced to fall back. Another strike does come in actually from the Panzerwerfer, but whiffs just slightly. Well, I say just slightly. It was really off the mark. I'm not sure why our Reaper was constantly putting the Panzerwerfer strikes behind the trees rather than on the trees, because that was where the 6-pounder was. But can't really complain, as it is allowing me to get my AT guns into very nice positions. Here I'm just going to be forcing my way up with the Bedford trucks. Unfortunately didn't unload that one in time, hadn't given it the shift unload order, which is a mistake on my part. Losing infantry for free is never a good thing. Now my Firefly 1C does come up the road. It gets one shot bailed out, I believe, by the Panther D. But my Firefly has managed to find a sniper shot onto the Verbelwind, so I'm quite happy with that, even if my Firefly is going to have to die in the process. The double Firefly was quite simply me trying to use up points, I think, that I had saved up at this point. Maybe not intentionally, I think I was floating. But yeah, double Firefly in phase B can be very, very strong. Maybe not strong enough to take on a Panther D at max range though, which was the biggest problem. So my infantry on the left still being forced back, but the Cromwells on the right are continuing to make damage, and we're presenting quite a large front here. But you can see how the unit compositions vary so greatly. I've got like just the HE units with the long range on the right side, and then all of the AT units and so on the left side to sort of compensate for which divisions I'm going up against. The 6-pounder is going to be taking a shot at the Panther D. We are engaging at the 600 meter range here, so I do have an extra 4 AP on the gun. Firefly is going to come around the corner, take a shot, gets the internal fire, really nice. Having put a little bit of pressure on with the 6-pounder, it does allow the Firefly to open up nice and easy, and the Panther D goes down. Another Panther D is on the field though, so now we've got to deal with that one, and I've got to find another way to get around all of this heavy armor. And the Verbal Vins that were brought in does take down one of my Hurricanes. I really wasn't having much luck using those in this game. It's actually generally a staple of the first Pancerna using the Hurricanes, but this time around I was very unlucky with using those Hurricanes, not so much with using this Firefly, which does manage to internal fragment the Panther D with its first shot, even under pressure from the Panzerwerfer. Now that Panzerwerfer strike was pretty much spot on and would have been great if I hadn't have internal fragmented that Panther D, because the Panther D could have then killed my Firefly. I do have the 2-inch mortar carrier in place though, so I'm just going to be smoking off the road just in case. Also brought in a Sherman 3 command tank to accompany the Firefly as we move into phase C. So now it's a matter of exploiting this right side that we've completely opened up. I've got some infantry that's going to be pushing ahead of the Cromwell 6s, basically giving myself targets. Grenfjord do manage to take out the Jeep, which is unfortunate. That's just going to get absolutely hammered by the Cromwell 6s in response. Now on the far right side, not entirely sure what happened here throughout the game, but now did get the better of Mark, I believe that is. So unfortunate for the opposing side, but let's continue to focus on this gameplay, as I had a really interesting game against our Reaper. Now I'm going to be using the 2-inch mortar carrier here. Use the line of sight of this house allows me to get it close enough and into range. That forces the Pack 40 to fall back. I only really need a decent amount of HE to take that out, so I'm going to be getting my Crusader AA Mark II to finish it off. And I've also of course got the Firefly that's waiting behind. The Crusader AA should be able to get the job done, and the Pack 40 will go down. Meanwhile on the right side, my Streltsy are continuing to fan out with the support of the Cromwell 6s. As long as they have the 1200 meter range to these trees, I don't need to move them. I want to always keep these Cromwell 6s at range if I can, whilst using them to basically cover the infantry advance. Then when the infantry gets to these tree lines and secures them, that's when you can move up your tanks, just like I'm doing here. So I'm getting to a point where I can tell there's not really much infantry here. There could be a Panzerschreck maybe in this tree line, but there's no like Panzergrens or anything tough for my Streltsy to beat, so Streltsy can freely move up, and therefore so can the Cromwell 6s. The other good thing about moving them up in the centre here is they can fire to either side and assist Mystical Walrus and so on. The main thing that's sort of preventing me from making too much ground at the moment is this Panther D. I can't just freely push onto that. I've brought in a second Firefly, or third Firefly I guess this is, the Firefly 5C. That's going to be accompanying my other Firefly 1C. And the Firefly 1 is going to get forced back by the Panzerwerfer, which would have been a nice strike if the Panther D was in a position to maybe take a shot. The Firefly is not going to reveal itself. Meanwhile on the left, Eugen still trying to use these orchards to prevent Gonzo from making any ground, as he is being very, very difficult to deal with. I've got a Staghound back here. This was the one that originally got internal fragmented. Not sure if I ended up using it for the rest of the game, but still making sure that you do get damaged vehicles back online is very important. Another Firefly 5C is on the field, and making sure I invest into enough of them is very important. I often say, make sure you have 2 Fireflies for every opposing Panther. You should be okay, because that way you can always at least 2v1, and you'll always have at least enough AP to get the job done, which sometimes might not be the case. And the other good way to deal with Panthers is of course 17 pounders, but the first Pancerna actually don't have a huge amount of 17 pounders, so they aren't something that you can really rely upon throughout the game if you don't want to like use up all of your strong counters. Like if you just brought in 17 pounder after 17 pounder, you'd run out very quickly, and then you'd run out of ways to sort of basically ambush, I guess, enemy Panthers. Whereas at least using Fireflies is a bit more versatile, and therefore works out a little bit better. And the Panzer IV there, gonna get forced to fall back. The Typhoons couldn't get the job done with the Spitfire Mark 9, but I've now got the Firefly accompanying both of the, all 3 of the Cromwell 6s here, and that's quite simply to counteract the use of armor against my Cromwells. Because the Cromwells, they're great against AT guns, they're great against infantry, they're great against support weapons in general, but what they're not good at against is armor. So that's where the Firefly is very, very important. I'm able to get these infantry quite far up. They're stuck in a pretty awkward position there, but my Cromwells are now making a move, and so is my Firefly. I'm fast moving it to the edge of this tree line, just so that when I can get there I can change the order to an attack move order and try and take on the Panzer IV-H. But with a Jagdpanzer coming down the road, that does change what I want to do slightly. I will have to be careful about that. Another Panzerwerfer strike going to be hitting the mark. And this Firefly, well, that's firing over to the left side, going to take out an Opel Blitz. For the Panzerwerfer, it's going to be going for my 2-inch mortar carrier. One thing I do end up noticing on this left side is that the Panzerwerfer is in line of sight if I move the Firefly to the right side. It's always worth checking, actually, if things are in line of sight. The best way to do it against enemy is just put, the cursor on the opposing unit, pressing C, you can see that line of sight, and then you just have to move your vehicle into line of sight in order to take it out. So Firefly there will soon take out that Panzerwerfer. I managed to get the Sherman 5, or Sherman 3, sorry, and the Firefly 5C into cover as the Jagdpanzer comes down the road. Gonna have to keep the Cromwell 6 back if I can though. Don't want to lose that unnecessarily. Here goes the Firefly. And if I can start to pick off those Panzerwerfers, that will make my life a lot easier on the left side. Because the last thing I want to do is have to engage a Panther D whilst being hit by a Panzerwerfer. That would be really quite bad. Anyway, with our team doing very, very well on the right side, there is a lot of pressure coming across towards our Reaper now. And that may be my chance to use this Firefly 5C. And the Fireflies in Phase C of the first Pancerna do have access to the 1-star veterancy, so 2-star with command, and it's very, very strong. And the Typhoon AT that was brought in by Lau there does actually kill off the Jagdpanzer entirely, so I don't have to make that play in the end. I was going to bring in my own Hurricanes to basically pin that Jagdpanzer and then engage it with the Firefly, but that ended up not needing to be the case, as my Hurricane does get forced to fall back there. Going to take out a Panther G on the left side. That's going to be my 17 pounder getting the job done there. And my Firefly 5C is taking a shot across at the Panzer IV. So I'm making life very difficult for Gonzo as he tries to push down this main road, coming up against the brunt of my armoured forces like double Firefly 17 pounder. Meanwhile up here we're joining the forces of the breakthrough. Mystical and Lau. They're going to be sniping Kretschmar there. Firefly gets the better of him. I believe the Sherman 2 or my 6 pounder managed to take out this Panzer IV as well. And an absolutely dominating victory in the end. Not necessarily against our own opponent, but we found a hole on the right side that we could exploit against Sombra. Like Sombra, unfortunately, was forced to deal with 3 Cromwell 6s, which are probably one of the best counters to the 716th Division in general. So yeah, it was a pretty tough spot to be in, that's for sure. But in a 4v4 or even a 3v3, you can definitely make plays like this. You can see I didn't really make any ground on this side, but using the Cromwells on the right, I sort of extended my front, allowed Mystical to play even more concentrated on his right, and it basically meant that he could join Lau, and Lau pushed through, and it created the domino effect that's basically given us the majority of the map. And it's just a matter of basically attack moving from right to left with all of the accompanying units. We got the Churchill in there, there's going to be the Cromwell 6s. There's now what? Got 5 Cromwell 6s going from right to left, accompanied by AVREs, yeah, Churchills, Fireflies, all sorts of stuff. And that's going to be it. 29 minutes and 53 seconds, a victory. So yeah, I thought this game really showed off the strengths of the 1st Pancerna. Those Cromwell 6s can be crucial in Phase A. The Hurricanes also are very important, but I think Al Reaper did a great job of countering them. He bought basically both of the Bevelvins in Phase A, and they were more than enough to stop my aggressive Hurricane play, and meant that his Boy to Firefly stayed alive a lot longer than it probably otherwise would have. Saying that, I did manage to end up pinning it down, but the Panzergram was in a good position to prevent that road from being exploited. So either way, some nice plays there from Al Reaper to prevent me from making ground. Did end up losing quite a lot of vehicles. You can see the KDs well in our favour. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting game that allowed me to sort of discuss a lot of the 3v3, 4v4 strategy and the 1st Pancerna. So in the end, this 17 pounder did a great job. It killed off Whitman, it killed off the Jagdpanzer IV, and towards the end it killed off the Panzer G of Gonzo. This would definitely give a lot of relief to Eugen on the left side, who was under a ton of pressure from Gonzo throughout the game. The Firefly took out one of the Panther Ds and sniped that Panzerwerfer for us. And that was pretty much it. I mean, most of our kills do come from the AT guns in this case. I did manage to ambush with them quite well against Al Reaper, whilst also making plenty of ground on the right side using the Cromwell 6s. There you go. Nice little game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.